Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Tuesday, the 10th of February. You're tuned into our mid-morning newscast here on ARIRANG TV. It's great to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. With the debate raging over taxes and welfare, President Park Geun-hye reiterates she is against raising taxes to pay for welfare programs. Critics say the president's stance on the issue is unrealistic. Korea's finance minister says the nation's easy monetary and fiscal policy stance will likely continue this year, while the government pushes ahead with structural reforms to ensure long-term growth. Plus, US President Barack Obama says Washington might send lethal arms to Ukraine, but only if diplomacy fails to end one of the biggest security challenges of our generation. We begin with the ongoing deliberations over whether to raise taxes to pay for Korea's welfare programs. President Park Geun-hye again waded into the debate on Monday, saying no new taxes are necessary, stressing instead that the issue can be solved through economic revitalization. But her stance quickly drew sharp criticism across party lines. Kim Young-gil starts us off.
President Park Geun-hye has voiced her opposition to raising taxes in order to fund welfare programs. She said Monday that economic revitalization is the key to making up for any revenue shortfall for welfare, and that it will also help create jobs and raise tax revenue.
경제 활성화를 위해서 최선을 다하지 않고 이 세수가 부족하니까 뭐 이렇게 국민에게 세금을 더 걷어야 된다 하면은 그것이 우리 그 정치 쪽에서 국민에게 할 수 있는 소리냐.
Since Park's administration came into office in 2013, her government has been dogged by questions about whether it could deliver on a key campaign pledge to provide expensive welfare programs without raising taxes. She has even drawn criticism from her own ruling Saenuri party, which views her stance on the issue as unrealistic. Critics argue that the government is trying to squeeze more money out of ordinary wage earners. In recent months, the government has raised cigarette prices and introduced a revised tax settlement scheme, drawing fire for both from the general public. Adding fuel to the fire, the main opposition party's newly elected chairman, Moon Jae-in, vowed to fight against President Park's policies on his first day in the post.
I will stand against President Park Geun-hye's hidden motives to raise the taxes of ordinary citizens. I will go against plans to limit welfare expansion.
Moon pledged to raise the corporate tax rate and withdraw tax cuts for the rich in order to establish what he described as a fair tax system. The ruling party responded by saying it will gather opinions from inside the party and continue to communicate with the opposition party on tax-related issues. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
The United States has reiterated that it welcomes dialogue with North Korea, but only when the regime shows it is serious about denuclearization. Speaking to reporters in Seoul on Monday, U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Tony Blinken said it was important to sustain international solidarity in pressuring North Korea. On the question of deploying an integral part of a U.S. missile defense system called THAAD to South Korea, he said no decision on this highly controversial issue has been made yet. This is Blinken's first overseas trip as Deputy Secretary of State and the third visit to South Korea by a senior U.S. official in recent weeks. Russia has moved to defuse concerns. Kim Jong-un's planned visit to Moscow in May could negatively affect relations between Russia and China. North Korean leader is expected to travel to the Russian capital for an event marking the 70th anniversary of the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. Russia's ambassador to China, Andrei Denisov, says Kim's attendance is natural and logical as Korea fought hard against Japan to be liberated. There had been concerns Beijing would be unhappy with the apparent snub by Kim, as North Korean leaders traditionally travel to China before they visit any other countries. Denisov noted that Chinese President Xi Jinping was one of the first guests to RSVP, and the North Korean leader is just one of 20 leaders that have accepted Moscow's invitation thus far. The ambassador added that Russia and China have common goals on denuclearizing North Korea, maintaining peace and stability in the Asia-Pacific region, and improving ties with both Koreas. And on a related note, President Park Geun-hye is weighing various diplomatic factors before deciding whether she will attend that World War II anniversary ceremony in Russia in May. South Korea's unification minister, Ryu Kil-jae, said that current sanctions against Moscow for its involvement in the Ukraine crisis must be taken into consideration before making a concrete decision. The government also needs to consult with relevant ministries and allies before responding to the invitation. As we just mentioned, numerous heads of state, including the leaders of both the Koreas, have been invited to Russia to mark that 70th anniversary of Nazi Germany's defeat in World War II. US President Barack Obama has made it clear that he is holding out hope for a diplomatic solution to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Obama has been mulling whether Washington will arm Ukrainian forces. He met with German Chancellor Angela Merkel at the White House on Monday to seek agreement on how the West should handle Russia's intervention in Ukraine. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
U.S. President Barack Obama says there has been no decision yet on whether to send arms to Ukraine. He signaled that he will wait for the outcome of Wednesday's high-stakes talks in Belarus between the leaders of Ukraine, Russia, France, and Germany before deciding on whether to send lethal arms to Kiev to help the Ukrainians fight pro-Russian separatists in the east of their country. Wrapping up talks with German Chancellor Angela Merkel at the White House on Monday, Obama stressed that diplomacy and sanctions remain the preferred tools to resolve this crisis.
If, in fact, diplomacy fails, what I've asked my team to do is to look at all options. What other means can we put in place to change Mr. Putin's calculus? And the possibility of lethal defensive weapons is one of those options that's being examined. But I have not made a decision about that yet.
Obama made clear that he has reservations about upping the ante in Ukraine and endangering Washington's unity with Europe on the issue. The German leader, who is opposed to sending weapons to Ukraine, urged Obama to think very carefully about his next move.
We continue to pursue a diplomatic solution, although we have suffered a lot of setbacks. These days, we will see whether all sides are ready and willing to come to a negotiated settlement.
The question of possibly supplying arms to Kiev has been overshadowed, at least temporarily, by the revived diplomatic push led by Merkel and French President François Hollande. The two are due to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukraine President Petro Poroshenko in Minsk on Wednesday, in what some experts say could be the last realistic attempt to resolve the crisis diplomatically. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
Now, Korea's finance minister says the government will likely maintain its easy monetary and fiscal policy stance this year while it pushes through structural reforms that will hopefully ensure long-term growth for the country. Speaking with Reuters in Istanbul on Monday ahead of the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting, Choi Kyung-hwan said the government has identified labour, education and the financial and public sectors as the main areas to reform so that Korea can avoid dropping into a drawn-out period of sluggish growth. The minister noted that Korea's key interest rate is already at a historic low of 2%, and this will continue for the time being. Korea's finance chief also called on other G20 economies to beef up their policy coordination, saying that countries following monetary policies only to boost their own competitiveness does not help the world economy. For 5 straight years now, the tax burden on Korean households has risen at a faster pace than household income. But corporate taxes, on the other hand, have actually been on a downward trend. Hwang Ji-hye reports on the growing tax burden for ordinary families.
The tax burden for Korean households outpaced income gains by nearly double in the first 3 quarters last year. Data from Statistics Korea shows the average monthly income of a household with more than 2 members stood at around $4,000, up more than 3.5% from a year ago. But households' average monthly spending on taxes rose almost 6% to around $140. The trend of households' tax burden increasing at a faster pace than their income has been an ongoing issue since 2010. And because tax expenditures exclude indirect taxes like value-added dues that households pay as they spend money to buy products, the actual tax burden on them is heavier. It's no surprise then that national income tax revenues collected mostly from ordinary citizens are on the rise. Korea's national income tax revenue has risen for the past 2 years since 2012, while corporate tax revenues were on a downward trend during the period. Although the government points to the sluggish economy at home and abroad for the low corporate tax revenues, experts say it should seek ways to create tax equity. Hwang Ji, Arirang News.
Now staying with finance news, and the world's stock market capitalization has hit an 11-year high. The Korea Exchange says the global stock market was valued at $63.5 trillion as of the end of 2014, which is up nearly 6% from a year earlier. The Asia-Pacific region gained the most at 14%, followed by the Americas. The European region, which also includes the Middle East and Africa, on the other hand, saw its market cap edge down nearly 9%. The Americas accounted for nearly half of the global stock market cap, while the Asia-Pacific region held around a third. Korea's stock market was valued at $1.2 trillion. That's about 2% of the world's total market cap. Now, with the demanding academic and working schedules of a great many Koreans, getting a decent night's sleep can often be low down on the priority list. What we know is, in this kind of always-on society, Koreans are sleeping less and worse. And for some, it's getting so bad that they require special treatment. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Hunched shoulders, dark circles under droopy eyelids, excessive yawning. These are telltale signs of sleep deprivation, a common condition among Koreans. The national sleep average is less than 8 hours, the lowest among OECD member countries. So what's keeping them up at night?
I sleep for 3 to 4 hours a day during the academic semester. I feel dizzy all day, so I try to get fresh air from time to time and try to sleep while commuting.
These days, I sleep like 5 hours because of night culture in Korea. My company has a lot of meetings and conferences, and after that, we go drinking. And so it's really hard to go sleep.
If aroma candles and counting sheep don't work, what can one do to get a good night's rest? Specialized medical centers have popped up in recent years to help, like this clinic in downtown Seoul. Quality shut-eye is important for the brain, says the clinic's doctor. While we're sleeping, the brain helps the body dump out waste, making way for a fresh start the following morning.
Sleep deprivation is truly detrimental to the body. The immune system will start to fail, inducing all sorts of diseases, including arrhythmia, diabetes, and stroke. It's important to ask for help and receive treatment, particularly for those suffering from insomnia for more than 3 months.
Physical and psychological methods are often used to help insomnia patients. Those suffering from sleep apnea may get help from a surgical procedure. For others, a 5 to 8 week program to change cognitive and behavioral patterns could be the ticket to reclaiming those precious sleep hours. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, from her talks with President Obama at the White House, German Chancellor Angela Merkel then made her way to the World Bank, where she dealt with the economic questions facing the European bloc at these very turbulent times. For more on that, we join Eunice Kim at the News Centre. She, as always, has been following developments for us. So, Eunice, Chancellor Merkel has been the staunchest champion of these austerity policies, and with a defiant anti-austerity Greek Prime Minister at the helm in Athens, she really does have her work cut out for her.
Yeah, you can say that again, Mark. And Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras, of course, on Sunday had publicly denounced EU's bailout program and refused to apply for an extension as had been urged by European leaders. And that sparked a plunge in Greek financial markets on Monday. Banking stocks diving by almost 10%, nearly reaching record lows, and the main index also falling to near record lows since the country's debt restructuring in 2012. Meanwhile, Chancellor Angela Merkel held meetings with World Bank President Jim Young Kim on Monday ahead of a G7 summit her country will host in June. Earlier at the White House, she said that she would wait on Athens to make a sustainable proposal for debt remittance and reforms before making her next move. Meanwhile, Greek Prime Minister Tsipras said he had not given up hope that a compromise could be reached with his European counterparts.
I'm confident there will be a deal with our partners on the basis of our plan. We haven't yet heard any specific and viable alternative proposal. I don't believe there is any serious reason for a deal not to exist between Greece and its partners, only political reasons.
Greek officials are expected to meet with its creditors in Brussels tomorrow in an emergency meeting of Eurozone finance ministers. And according to a source cited by the New York Times, they'll bring with them a detailed compromise plan that keeps about 70% of the current bailout terms. Now, if a deal is not reached by the end of the month, renegotiation or not, it could significantly raise the possibility of a Grexit or a Greek exit out of the Eurozone.
Okay, and Eunice, let's shift our attention now to Japan, and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is actually enjoying higher approval ratings after the country's hostage crisis involving the Islamic State militant group.
Yeah, that's right. And it is the first series of polls since the public slaying of Japanese war correspondent Kenji Goto. Japan's largest daily, Yomiuri Shimbun, held a poll which found that support for Abe had grown to 58% from the 53% measured back in January. Now, another poll by Kyodo found that more than 60% said they approved of the government's handling of the hostage crises. Both dailies had a majority of their respondents agree with Tokyo's plans to continue humanitarian aid to IS-affected regions. 57% of those polled by Kyodo said Japan's response to the extremist group should remain non-military in nature. Mark.
Well, thank you very much for your reports, Eunice, and we'll see you back at noon.
See you then.
And a good Tuesday morning to you all. Now, as of this Monday, there are exactly 3 years left until the 2018 Winter Olympics kicks off here in Korea in the mountainous city of Pyeongchang. So how much of the preparation work has been completed and what still needs to be done for a successful event? Well, Connie Lee has more.
For those of you counting down, the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics is exactly 3 years away. Come February 9th, 2018, the high-profile competition will kick off in Gangwon-do province with top athletes aiming for gold. While it still seems a long way off, in actuality, the clock is ticking for Korea as it must complete all preparations a year before the Games open. With budget and environmental issues looming, the question is whether Korea will be ready in time. So far, only around 10% of work has been done on the 6 new facilities being built for the Olympics, and the funds received from sponsors to bankroll construction only make up 15% of the goal of about $730 million needed. Meanwhile, citizens of Gangwon-do are up in arms about money being wasted, especially the combined $219 million being used on the speed skating rink and an ice hockey rink, which will be dismantled after the 17-day event.
As for facilities that are set to be used afterwards, like the 12,000-seater figure skating rink, with no concrete plans for how the venue will be put to use, local residents aren't exactly excited about adding another rink to the 5 they already have. Pyeongchang officials say Korea will be ready in time, but hopes linger that more practical plans will be implemented soon enough. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Now moving on, Spider-Man's Uncle Ben once said, with great power comes great responsibility. Well, I say with a great predecessor comes an even greater responsibility, as manager Shin Tae-young held his inauguration press conference on Monday. Now, with head coach Lee Kwang-jung resigning from his post as the head coach of the Olympic football team due to leukemia, the now former national team assistant coach held a press conference on Monday at the KFA headquarters. Now, there he talked about the burden of filling in for Lee Kwang-jung, but added that he'll use the former head coach as an inspiration to qualify for the Rio Summer Games in 2016. Now, having coached under Uli Stjulicke for several months now, expectations are high for head coach Shin Tae-young. Now, speaking of burdens, when you have a title like Super Rookie, there's a pressure to win your first title. Well, not for these former KLPGA stars, apparently, including Kim Se-young, who already won her first LPGA Tour title. Now, it didn't come easy with all the wind at the Pure Silk Bahamas LPGA Classic, though, as she went into a sudden death playoff hole against fellow Korean Yoo Sun-young and Thailand's Arya Junengarn. But after a birdie in the first playoff hole, she claims her first LPGA Tour title, giving Korea their second title in 2 tournaments this season. Meanwhile, with Park Geun-hye finishing a stroke ahead of Lydia Ko, the fight for the top world ranking remains closer than ever. And while Kim Se-young is having a great 2015 season so far, 2015 really hasn't been so great for Olympic swimmer Park Tae-hwan, who's currently involved in a doping scandal. And although it seems like all signs are pointing to him unknowingly receiving these shots, that doesn't seem to matter for the Korea Swimming Federation. Now, with the nomination and winners of the 2014 Korea Swimming Federation Athlete of the Year honors being announced, Park Tae-hwan was left off the shortlist amid the ongoing investigation with this doping scandal. Now, Park, who won 1 silver and 5 bronze medals and set a Korean medal record with 20 last season during the Incheon Asian Games, was the clear favorite. But with the latest incident, 2 divers will receive the top honors in Woo Ha-ram and Park Han-byeol. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. Metropolitan areas are blanketed with white snow from yesterday, but hopefully all the leftover ice and snow melt quickly as the bitterly cold snap finally breaks today under mostly to partly sunny skies. But dry weather continues with dry weather advisory and even in warning in place under most parts of the eastern parts of the peninsula. So drinking plenty of water or eye drops should help you to stay a bit more comfortable under these dry conditions. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. So the daytime high here in the capital will peak at 5, while Daegu and Gwangju rise to 11 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island and Daejeon should see a high of 9 and 7, and Dokdo peaks at 6. Now, temperature readings look to be promising for the rest of the week and into the weekend under a good amount of sunshine. But that's all for Korea, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all we have for now. Plenty more stories are on our website, and it's also worth checking out the Arirang TV smartphone app, which has all the latest news and programs on it as well. We'll be back at noon Korea time with our next newscast. So until then, goodbye.